from WBBZ-TV Sports. It's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Beat the Champ as we begin a month-long stay here at Classic Lanes in Kenmore. My name is Paul Peck with my Hall of Famers, Sue Novoitsky, and our guest scorekeeper this month, Sue Jeziorski. And we come in with Brandon Korczykowski winning 3 in a row, but he has got a murderer's lineup of bowlers that he's going to have to get through, starting with today's show. Tony Dolan, followed by Pat Brick and Derrick Greene. But beyond that, Sue, we've got some of the best bowlers we've ever had on Beat the Champ coming up this month.
I know it's going to be a very challenging month, and we don't have Chuck and we don't have Mike.
That's right.
So it's going to have someone else have an opportunity to kind of rise to the top. But we have 7 out of 10 left-handers this month and 4 today. And so even though, Brandon bowled so great, we haven't seen a lot of him, we haven't seen a lot of Tony Dolan, but these are 4 super talented left-handers.
Yeah, and beyond to this show, for this month's stay here, the bowlers that are on Beat the Champ over the next 3 weeks combined for 67 show appearances and 58 show wins, Sue. And even though they may all be lefty, they all do different things, don't they?
They do. We have completely different styles, which is kind of nice for everybody at home to watch. We've got Tony Dolan, he's a little bit more down and in. You've got Brandon Korczykowski, big rev rate. You got Pat Brick, a tweener in between. And then we've got Derrick Greene, doesn't use his thumb. So really nice to see different kind of players out there making cuts. It doesn't have to be one style that can get it done.
Yeah, so we've got some great bowlers. We've had fun here at Classic Lanes before. Our longest winning streak came here. One of our 300s came here. So we are here at one of Buffalo's classic bowling centers for one of Buffalo's classic bowling shows. So let's get rolling. And we get it started with a good matchup between our returning champion, Brandon Korczykowski, and one of Buffalo's best, Tony Dolan. Brandon may have the height advantage, but that isn't as crucial in bowling as it is in basketball, so we'll see how this shakes out. It's good to have Tony back on the show. We have not seen Tony since December of last year, which is unusual because he's one of the best guys in town. Pesky work things get in the way sometimes for Tony, but it's good to have him back on the show, and he'll have a challenge in Brandon, who having won the 3 in a row at Manor 2, and as we talk about, he's got momentum of 3 in a row, but that was a little while ago, now on a completely different surface at a completely different center.
Right, and you never really know what you're getting into when you come to a new center, and very similarly to when we were at Alley Brandt, this house did favor the left-handers. I mean, over the course of the last 4 years that we've been coming out, I don't know that I've made that correlation before, but for whatever the reason, 7 out of 10 left-handers is, you don't know. He could have come into a place that didn't favor the left-handers at all. So, good for him.
Yeah, Tony starts with the open frame, unusual based on how good Tony is, but he'll shake that off, I don't have any doubt. And here's our first look here at Classic Lanes at Brandon Korczykowski. 6th appearance on the show for Big Brandon, 4 wins and 4 losses. And I mentioned on a 3-match winning streak right now.
So one thing to think about is when they start this first match here, they've come off the practice pair. So the guys get here a little early, they get a chance to warm up, but they don't necessarily get a lot of time on this TV pair. So both these guys have come up and both have gone high, which tells you that the practice pair was probably a little bit tighter, and they're both finding it out, unfortunately, in their first frame.
So it's a spare for Brandon in the first frame. We are on natural wood surface here at Classic Lanes. The oil, we'll have to wait till Brian comes on for our second match to give us the real details on what the oil pattern is, but I get the sense it's a little different than what the qualifying was.
Actually, I did speak to Pat Brick, who we'll see upcoming in the next match, and he said the practice pair played very similarly to the qualifying. But again, we see these guys come up and go high on their first frame. It's most likely this TV pair, every pair in a house plays different, so they're just going to have to get used to it. Again, the ball hooked up a little bit high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a moment they're looking at a pesky little split to deal with, but he had those 2 pins on the right side, did the 45-year-old from East Amherst. Those went down, so now it's a little bit of an easier 1-pin spare pickup here to start spare for Brandon Korczykowski.
You know, another thing to note is that because they're both left-handers, they're both experiencing the same thing on the lane. So the left side does hook a little bit more on this pair, but they're both going to have to figure it out. They've come to this pair with equipment that you'll notice isn't very shiny. They've got duller equipment that, because they've played tight for them, and you know, when it hooks up like this, that could mean a really big change on the lanes. I don't know that it's going to be subtle. They're going to have to change their approach, and we'll see how they adjust their equipment to that.
11th time that we have seen Tony Dolan here on Beat the Champ. 7 wins and 9 losses. I mentioned it's been since December, the last time we had him on the show, and even he was almost a weekly regular, monthly regular when we first started the show, and not as regular since then. And again, work schedules have had a lot to do with that for Tony. So, but it's always good to see him back, and again, one of Buffalo's best. So he'll get a spare in the second frame, the 43-year-old from West Seneca. Self-employed in the precast concrete company. Summertime can be a little busy for that line of work, so yeah. we'll cut Tony some slack on not being able to be on the show as much. But you know, again,
still manages a lot of leagues out there, though. He does. Get
yeah,
out
I was
there.
Gonna say, apparently we're not enough of a priority for Tony.
Well,
so
I guess it's nicer freer than it stays.
There it is. Nice strike for Tony in the third frame.
I got a little nervous there because he made a move off that last shot and 32, and he hit actually a wiggle spot. You could actually see his ball wiggle on the lane. It just and never make its move. So it's like sometimes when you move into different areas, you move into you know, a totally different atmosphere.
Is that more crucial this month because we have so many lefties? Is maybe finding a little slighter, little location on that left side going to be a little more critical because of the preponderance of the southpaws? I
think it's too early to tell. I think as the day goes on, yes, that's going to be true, because they're going to, with their equipment and the way they all throw it, because like we alluded to in the opening, all these guys are very, very different.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
All right, let's see what Brandon can do in the 8th frame, working 3 in a row. That one drifted and leaves him a rather challenging 4-7-6, I believe that is.
Wow. Looks like this match is going to be
I'm not sure either guy really wants to win this one right now. So there you go. That's bowling in a nutshell. 3 strikes in a row. Looked like Brandon had it figured out, and then not only does he miss his target, he misses it to leave himself a really difficult second shot.
Brandon's been good at breaking these up all day, so this is his first.
Well, he made a good run at it.
Got a lot
he throws
of
it with such power that sometimes you just explode those pins and get them flying all over the place. It flew, it just didn't flow where it flew where he wanted it to go.
Well, because of that, you know, Tony's got 2 opens here. He's going to have to double here to even this match up. So this is a big ball for him right here with only 2 frames left.
There's one.
There's one.
8-frame strike for Tony Dolan. Bowls regularly, somehow finds the time. Mondays at Broadway, Wednesdays at Spare Time, Thursdays at Kenmore, Saturday in the Bowling Proprietors Association of Western New York Travel League, maybe one of the best leagues in the country. That Saturday league, all the big names that we have on this show, almost all of them bowl in that league on Saturdays.
I know, we used to have a lot of really good travel leagues. Well,
there's your double.
That's to tie this match.
Yep. So Tony Dolan is just too good and too savvy to not put up the best fight he can put up. So we are all tied as Brandon Korczykowski heads to the 9th frame.
The crazy thing is here that even though it looks like it's been Brandon's match all along, now Brandon cannot shut Tony out. Even if he strikes out here, he'll still be able to lose by 1 if Tony strikes out, but definitely needs to post these up.
That looked good. That looked good. As soon as it left his hands, went right where he needed it to go, hit the pocket, knocked some all down for a 9th frame strike. So here we go. First match of the month here at Classic, and we're coming right down to the 10th frame to determine it all, which is what we always love. Keeps Sue on her toes there too, doesn't it?
Yeah, she's taking it all in over there because we talked a little bit about. We tried
the best shot. You got the best view in the house here.
We tried to analyze what was going to happen ahead of time, and just looking at what the balls the guys were throwing and where they're playing on the lane, and it's dead even.
Let's see how Brandon can finish it up and put the pressure on Tony. And again, not that same explosion of pins, so he leaves himself some work to do here. Thought we might get another one of those love taps on that 3 pin, but it didn't happen. So we're gonna have score that barely pushes 200 here to get the win for the first match.
So Tony's gonna need the first strike in the 10th when he comes up to win this match. 9. If he matches him and goes 9 spare, whatever, it'll be a tie.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever Brandon does here,
so this fill ball is huge.
It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right, so that's where we're at. This is the final roll of the 10th frame for Brandon Korczykowski, and this one's going to have a big key impact on what Tony Dolan will have to do when he comes up in the 10th frame to figure out who's going to move on to take on Pat Brick.
Exactly.
So let's watch and listen to a key moment early on here at Classic Lanes. Same kind of deal there.
Had to watch that one. Okay.
That pen was rolling, but same deal where he didn't get all he wanted to get. So it's a 203 on the board for Brandon Korczykowski. So Tony Dolan to the 10th frame. What does he need here to win?
Well, he needs 9 spare strike to win. Strike will obviously seal it right here. So
there's your strike.
That's it.
And that clinches a win. Maybe not the prettiest of Tony Dolan's bowling career with 2 open frames, but I'll tell you what, 3 strikes in 3, 4, and 5, and 3 strikes in 8, 9, and 10. That'll do it, right? That'll wind up doing it. So it's a win for Tony Dolan over Brandon Korczykowski. The win streak comes to an end for Brandon, and then sets us up now for a matchup of Titans here in our next match with Tony taking on Pat Brick. There's another strike for Tony Dolan. So it's a win for Tony. We'll come back and talk to Brandon, get you ready for that next match. When Sue and I return, we are off and rolling here on Beat the Champ at Classic Lanes in Kenmore. Our first match is in the books. Tony Dolan ends with 5 consecutive strikes to beat Brandon Korczykowski, 225 to 203. You guys both look like you were kind of fishing around a little bit, right?
The right lane is a lot tighter, so I tried to make him finish on the right lane, but that ended up being the easier lane for us. Mm-hmm. So the thought process was, I thought it was the right thought process, but we just didn't execute on the left lane, the easier lane for me.
Yeah, gotcha. Sue?
I have a question for you. So when it's a 1-game match, it's really tough to make decisions on if you would have made a ball change or a speed change, something to make up the difference for that.
I felt like when I looked up at how fast I was throwing it, I was too amped up, obviously, and I didn't realize it till the 3rd frame. And the right lane was so hard that it was like taking all my thoughts going on the right lane, go on the easier lane, and I screwed up.
All right. Well, despite that admission, Brian, our proprietor here at Classic, is still going to give you a little bit of something, right,
Well,
Brian?
thanks for coming out
You're
and
welcome.
being the
Thank you-
champion.
Thank you
and
for hosting us.
my pleasure. Thank
Right.
you.
All right. Always good to have Brandon on. You always keep us guessing, which is always fun, which we like. But we've got a great match coming up. It's Tony Dolan versus Pat Brick, two of the Titans of Buffalo Bowling. That's next on Beat the Champ. Well, this is going to be fun. Two of the all-time greats here in Western New York when it comes to bowling, Tony Dolan and Pat Brick, will square off in match number 2. Don't you figure these two guys have probably bowled against each other about 500 times?
You're reading my mind. I'm thinking this is like just another day for these two.
Right. This is just another tournament anywhere in Western New York where the best guys bowl against each other. So this will be fun. Anybody that follows the sport of bowling in this town, and I assume that's a good amount of the people that are watching this show, have to be excited. Not only do they know these guys, they know how good both of them are.
Absolutely.
So we're off and rolling on our second match here at Classic Lanes in Kenmore, and to help us through match number 2, we bring in the proprietor here of Kenmore Lanes. We're in Kenmore at Classic Lanes. Sorry about that, Brian.
Gee,
Brian
thanks.
Borowski. I'll get it right here eventually. And of course, we've got a bunch of stuff to talk to Brian about, but let's start with what you kind of have in store for these guys here today, all these crazy lefties on this month's show.
Wasn't planned from my point of view, but what happens, and we ended up with 7 lefties, including the champion coming in. Just the way it happens.
Does this place tend to favor lefties? Is that anything that ever has come up in your long time you're owning this Classic Lanes?
As we've talked about in the past, lefties have a little bit more of an advantage because the lanes are used less on the left-hand side than the right-hand side. It's just a normality to it. Whether we're a lefty house or not, I mean, I don't know. It's we have scores from both sides, right and left. So.
There are places, Sue, that become labeled as lefty houses, so to speak.
There is, and then there's places that seem like they shut the left-handers right out. So, I guess.
Well, then you have back in the day where you had Rockmar, where they intentionally shut out the left-handers.
Aha!
We could talk about that
Is
because
that
they're no longer in
a
business.
long-held Buffalo bowling secret that's been?
It wasn't a secret.
No, it wasn't a secret, huh?
You were shocked when you saw actual people, left-handers bowling in Rockmar. Would go, "What are you doing here? You know you can't bowl here."
That's really funny. All right, so a strike and a spare for Pat Brick to get it started. Here's Tony Dolan, frame 2. Tony's balls seem to kind of be running out of gas about the last 20 feet, right?
What gives you that illusion is that his ball speed was very slow, and when it's slow, it just reads the lanes that much faster, and it was just slow. He just threw that slow.
Then when you have a little bit more of an aggressive ball, the ball will use its energy up front and then have the appearance that it's not hooking as much, when in reality it is.
So when it's running out of energy, it is slowing down too.
Correct.
But that isn't necessarily, you can still be successful with it that way, I think is what you're saying there, Brian.
Correct.
That just because it looks like it's running out of speed doesn't mean it's any less effective.
Well, it all depends. If there's carry down, you wanted to do that. So there's different, but in this case, he definitely didn't want to do that. Now that one was a much better shot right there.
You always want to conserve energy with the bowling ball because that creates the better pin action. When it loses energy, the ball hits flat, the pins hit flat, and you don't get as good a pin action.
Right.
Sure.
Sometimes when you leave pocket splits, when you see the ball hit the pocket and it looks like a good shot.
That's not going to count, correct?
Correct.
So that one hits the gutter before it hits the 7-pin, and that's going to be back-to-back opens for Tony Dolan.
Yeah,
Surprising.
unusual. We are in the beginning of the season, and we have to shake off the rust from not being as competitive all summer long. None of us really bowl as much in the summer as we do in the fall and winter.
Well, speaking of that, one of the great sort of landmarks of the start of the bowling season is the Greater Buffalo Usbc Kickoff tournament. That was a couple of weeks ago, and both Tony and Pat were in it. Pat was able to make the 16 and make it to the quarterfinals of that before eventually losing to eventual winner and certainly familiar beat the champion Chuck Jagosinski, who won that. Congratulations to Chuck, beating Chad Mee in the finals of that. And and of course that's such a big event here. Lisa McMorrow winning the handicap division, and despite your best efforts to claim another trophy there, Sue, it was Ruth Walliver who wins the women's division.
And actually I crossed with Ruthie, and she's got a lot of ball speed, and early in the season like this, when we're all a little bit rusty, and I'm not gonna lie and tell you, I didn't bowl all summer long. From the last week of league, I put the balls away and didn't bring them out to the kickoff tournament. So.
Nice pick up there for Pat.
Great spare.
How hard was that, Brian?
I couldn't make it because I'm right-handed, so it'd be a little more difficult. It's right-handed than left-handed.
So a couple of impressive, 2 strikes, 2 spares, but some impressive bowling on those spares for Pat Brick, and now Tony's got to shake off those 2 back-to-back opens.
Yeah, he finds himself down 23 very early in the match. And
that's a good way to do it, with a 4th frame strike for the 43-year-old from West Seneca, Tony Dolan. So that kickoff tournament is interesting because not everybody has been bowling all summer long, right?
Well, looking on the guys' side who made it to who were the final 3. You said Chad Mee, you said Chuck Jagosinski, you said Pat.
Mike Zarcone and Pat, that was the final 4.
Okay.
Pat, Chuck, Mike, and Chad Mee.
And what do they all have in common?
They've all been on this show almost every week.
Yeah, through the entire summer. So these guys have kept up bowling all summer long. So you are going to absolutely be sharper than the people who have put their balls away for a couple of months. This looks like a good time to take a break. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ right after this. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Along the lines of what Brian had said about wanting to retain the energy in the bowling ball, like Rocket Rob, who has that great ball speed, that ball speed helps retain the energy, and we're finding that in today's game, ball speed plays a big part, and the slower speeds get into a lot of trouble as far as moving around the lane and leaving funny formations. It's like this is a game of really keeping up your ball speed nowadays.
So let me ask both of you guys this. Far be it for me to tell someone like Tony Dolan that he needs to change something, but Tony is not a big ball speed guy. So as he sees the evolution of the sport, is there anything that someone like Tony either can or should do to try to stay competitive?
Well, all of that is based, in different type of bowling balls, different type of layouts on the bowling ball. So no matter how you bowl, the pro shop operators can set bowling balls in your hand to make it effective on different lane conditions. Just like in golf, you don't do a 9-iron off the tee and expect to go 300 yards. Same thing in bowling. You have different equipment, different layouts. You could have the same ball drilled different ways to do different things. And that's the most important thing for a pro shop operator to help.
I saw you at the Bowling Proprietors Golf Tournament. You might not expect a 9-iron to go about 100 yards, right?
Well, I got it on the green.
By the way, that was a fun time. The Bowling Proprietors Annual Golf Tournament out at East Aurora Country Club. Are they going to invite you back, or have you completely destroyed one of Western New York's nicest golf courses?
No, I think you guys have settled down, right?
No, we've settled down from the beginning years. We shouldn't really talk about it.
No,
it's gone tame. It's a great event.
That's good. No,
we had 36 teams of foursomes. We sold out. It was a great time. Weather was great. A lot of great door prizes. We raised a lot of money for it.
Some of the best door prizes I have ever seen at any golf tournament, and I play in a lot of those tournaments. Your door prizes were among the best I have ever seen.
And it's not like you had to do Chinese raffles or anything like those. Those were actually door prizes that if you just participated in the event, you had an opportunity to win. So that's what makes our tournament a little bit different. And we've raised over $15,000 for youth scholarships.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's great. So certainly get that on your calendar for next year in August, early August.
It's always the first Monday of August.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So Pat Brick, 3 consecutive strikes, really putting the pressure. Tony is working 4 consecutive strikes now as he heads to frame 8. And that will not be a strike, and it will be far from it.
Heard a little groan on that one.
Yeah, that one got inside his target too, and he did that last time when he was in that pressure situation of needing to strike, and he pulled it a little bit.
Tony is probably one of the least visibly emotional bowlers we ever have on the show, but I think he's been on enough for us to know. You just kind of look at his face and his facial expressions will tell you how he's feeling. That was almost a really, really nifty spare pickup.
Yeah, he probably could have used it too.
Instead, it's his 3rd open of the match, and I can't ever recall anybody on this show winning with 3 opens.
I know.
Tony did it with 2 in the last match.
He's bowling a pretty experienced guy too.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Derrick Greene is awaiting the winner of this match. Derrick is not necessarily as experienced, but he's making his 2nd consecutive appearance 2 months in a row here on Beat the Champ. So we'll see what Derrick has in store for either Tony or Pat. Brian, we've had in our previous trips here to Classic Lanes, some memorable events have occurred, including Jeremy Zimmerman's winning all 9 matches as part of his 16-match winning streak. We got a 300 here. Is there something about this place that brings out the best in these guys?
No, it's just a little different. I mean, you have wood surfaces compared to synthetic, so that makes it a little more challenging. At the same time, good strike on for Pat. Just a little bit different.
Maybe that's what it takes.
Nothing real special.
Maybe that's all it takes. But we've always had fun trips here. We've always had really interesting and memorable events that have occurred. And Pat Brick's won a bunch of matches here over the years, particularly here at Classic Lanes too. Looks like he's on his way to doing it again.
I still need a cut.
Still need what?
A cut.
Oh,
of his winnings.
that's for you to discuss with him when you eventually hand him some prize money. So.
Yeah,
Then
that's
again,
good.
you control what goes in the envelope, so you can kind of manage your own cut there if you want.
Great point. Thank you.
See? I'm looking out for you, Brian.
That's going to be enough for Pat, and I'm sure he feels better than last time he ended up where he was struggling in the 10th frames to finish out those matches.
right.
So I'm glad he got that under control, and this one he's going to move on and face Derrick.
All right, so Pat Brick is going to come up with the victory here over Tony Dolan and move on to our 3rd match of the day to take on Derrick Greene. We'll talk to Tony, find out what his thoughts are on the lane conditions here at Classic, and we'll come back with our next match. More to come from here at Classic Lanes in Kenmore. You're watching Beat the Champ. Well, a 225 was good enough to get Tony the win in the first match. A 226 does him in this match against Pat Brick. You had some great strikes, and you had probably more open frames than I think we've ever seen you have before. What was the challenge of the inconsistency here today?
Well, the 2 lanes were a little bit different from one another. The right lane was definitely distinctly tighter, and it didn't hook as much, so you had to keep in mind which one you were on and throw it good. And I just had a couple really bad executions, and you could see that.
Sue?
In the 8th frame, you left the 4, 6, 7, 10. So you muttered under your breath, "That's not good." Was that a timing issue? What happened on that
Actually,
shot?
I felt a little twinge in my lower back, and I just kind of followed through to the right, and it went high, and it was just not good.
Oh, so the twinge in his back was what was not good, not necessarily the results, although they weren't very good either. But yeah, there you go, Brian.
Tony, great bowling. Thanks for supporting Beat the Champ. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Our
All
pleasure.
right, we got to get you back more than every 6 months here. It's always good to have Tony on the show. Pat Brick rolling on versus Derrick Greene. It's match number 3. It is coming up next. Final match of our show. There, those guys get the handshake off to a good start. It's Derrick Greene taking on Pat Brick, and this is going to be interesting because certainly Pat's coming off a good win. We know what Pat's history is. Derrick is building his history as well too here, a little younger into the game, but we've seen him now for 2 months in a row after he made his debut at Manor 2. So he is bowling well right now. Let's see how it goes. And again, Sue, while another lefty, he's a much different style of lefty than any of our other lefties.
Absolutely. High rev rate, doesn't put his thumb in the ball, so you're going to see him, a little more cup on his wrist.
Yeah, that one was 21.5 miles an hour down the lanes.
That's how our game has changed.
Unless Brian, you've got the speed gun all ramped up to Nolan Ryan level for today.
Great spare.
Nice spare.
No, I don't have to. Actually, we limit it to 25 miles an hour, so if it goes over 25 miles an hour.
Has anyone ever thrown a 25-mile-an-hour one?
Oh, more. So
really?
Yeah, that's why we limit it, so people don't try to do it hard and ruin our machine. So, it turns off at 25 miles an hour.
On this show, when somebody hits 20, it's kind of a revelation. So I'm surprised, I guess.
Yeah, I can do it.
You don't buy that, Sue, do you? Can you do it, really?
Yeah, I
you really tried to?
I average probably about 17, 18 miles an hour when I bowl, and on my spare shots, I can.
You really ramp it up?
I can, yeah.
I have never seen this man throw a bowling ball.
Yes, you have.
I don't.
College. Granted, that was 30 plus years ago.
You want me to remember college?
Well,
strike in the first frame. I don't want this conversation to drift into your college. So, strike in the first frame for Pat Brick, as he looks to go 2-0 now, 15 wins now. Beat the Champ moves him into the top 5 among all of our Beat the Champ bowlers, trailing Chuck Jagosinski and Mike Zarcone.
Great shot.
Technically, Zarcone and Jagosinski. Let me get the order right.
I'm looking on the screen right here because I'm blocked from from actually physically watching it.
Yeah, you got away with it a little bit, but it came back nicely. If it was on the right lane, it probably would not have come back.
Derrick,
they are playing a little different, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody has said that already, including Tony at the end of the last match. So the right lane is a lot tougher.
Yeah, the right lane is, again, characteristic of wood lanes.
There's a hang spot.
There is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when you're dealing with wood lane conditions, they all have different characteristics. And 32 plays a little bit tighter than 31.
That one was almost 22 miles an hour, by the way, down the lane. So I'm going to keep mentioning this as it keeps getting higher.
And he hit that hang spot on top of it. So that's where we talked about the wiggle in the beginning when Tony had hit that spot and the ball wiggled. That's the hang spot on the lane.
Second spare pickup for Derrick Greene, 29 years old, from Buffalo, New York, employed as a driver and wheelchair aid for Prime Flight at the Buffalo Niagara International Airport. He's got his girlfriend Angel here cheering him on, his daughter Iris, and his mom Gloria. Good cheering section on hand for Derrick. Well, speaking of cheering sections, you had about, close to 100,000 people cheering you on earlier on in the summer there, Mr. Borowski?
Yeah, I think it was more than that.
Well, it might have been. As we've talked with Brian before, he is the president of the New York State Bowling Proprietors Association and the national treasurer for the National Bowling Proprietors Association of America. And with those duties, you got to do the call to start your engines for the NASCAR race at Watkins Glen in August. Tell everybody, well, before we tell everybody about it, we're going to let everybody listen to it.
Race fans, it's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Here to give the command, please welcome our Grand Marshals, members from the Go Bowling family, joined by President of the New York State Bowling Proprietors Association, Brian Borowski.
Drivers, start your engines! Let's get bowling up the Glen!
All right, so tell everybody what that experience was like.
I mean, I'm not a huge NASCAR fan, but it was just a lifetime experience that you'll never forget. Just going around in a pace car at the beginning, just taking pace car rides, to being introduced to all the drivers. We shook hands with all the drivers, the excitement there at the track. And then, given the call to race, to start the engines, And then on top of that, being the Grand Marshals, where we actually led all the cars for 2 laps around the track. I mean, it was unforgettable, unbelievable experience, and it was just so cool.
Yeah, of course, it was the Go Bowling race, which
Of
is
course.
Sponsored by the Bowling Proprietors Association, so that's how that all came into play. But, you know, Brian, I've told people that one of the most incredible, I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of really cool sporting events throughout my career. One of the most incredible ones I've ever been to was a NASCAR race. It just, there's something about the crowds, the feel, the noise, the smell, the sounds, everything about it is really an incredible experience, and that sounds like you got a really good dose of that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, we actually went around to different campers where if they displayed, you know, bowling artifacts or whatever, you know, we gave them upgraded pit passes. And some of the stuff that we saw was like unbelievable. It's like, where did you get that stuff from?
Like what?
They had you know, artifacts from like the 1950s and 60s of old bowling balls, old trophies,
Wow.
old memorabilia, and some had little, you know, bowling lanes and you know, trophies, and it was unbelievable.
That's so cool. I didn't know that part. I talked to you soon after, and your excitement about it was contagious. Like you had just come back from it, and you were still like kind of in the throngs of it, and it was so fun talking to you about it because it seemed like very exciting.
I mean, it is. I mean, I'm still, I mean, you know, a couple months later, I'm still, you know, it's just an unbelievable experience. I mean, I would never have thought in a million years that I would start a race. I mean, it's...
Fifth frame, Pat Brick is perfect through 4, perfect through 5.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
227 average for Derrick, bowls regularly in a couple of nights a week in a league at Airport Lanes, is an aspiring professional bowler, has been working with a coach in Las Vegas, and really talks about kind of modeling his game after Ryan Simonelli, a guy that he really admires, and you know, and that's a pretty good guy to try to pattern yourself after. One of the best bowlers, not only from Western New York, but in the country.
Oh, that was a good shot there as well.
That was a great shot, actually.
9 career 300 games for Derrick, 4 800 series with a high 827. He'll get the 7th frame spare.
So he's got a lot of composure for someone who is, number one, new to the show, new to the whole experience, and kind of very excited about it as well. So, you know, he's got to tone down those emotions to keep his mind on what's going on out there. And I'll tell you, he's got a very strong spare game. And when you look at all that rev rate and all of that power in his first shot, for him to be able to tone that down and be so accurate on his spares is pretty amazing.
Back to striking for Pat Brick in the 7th frame. So Pat looking for 2 wins in a row here and advancing on to next week's show, where the winner of this match will take on Angela Glazer, the 4th female that we have had on Beat the Champ, and obviously qualified 4th, and that says an awful lot about Angela, so we're looking forward to seeing her on next week's show.
Absolutely, and it's the 2nd week here of September, and our next, you know, we always have fun going over to Island Lanes and seeing what they've got in store for us.
Sometimes too much fun.
Our Halloween show, you never know what's coming up. You got dressed up pins, and you know,
Is
sometimes we get you to wear a hat.
Is the guy dressed as a giant pin going to be there again this year?
Probably.
Is Malwitz going to convince someone to get in the pin costume again this year?
Well, the qualifiers start Saturday.
How about if I call the whole thing wearing the giant pin costume?
That'd be awesome.
I can't get you to wear a hat, and you're going to wear a giant pin costume. I don't see it happening.
I don't know. We'll see what kind of mood I'm in.
Where's Paul, and bring him back.
I just kind of roam around. I'll randomly roam around and bump into things because I probably can't see out of that. So.
Well, anyway, September 28th, Saturday, September 28th is the opening qualifier for that, 2 and 4 p.m.
Yeah, so we're coming up on the next set of qualifying for our next series of shows, and that will be at Malwitz's Island Lanes on Grand Island.
Yep, and he's got a Wednesday qualifier, which is kind of unusual during the bowling season. Kind of nice if you can't make a weekend. Wednesday, October 2nd, 7 and 9. Sunday, October 6th, 12, 2 and 4, with the top 24 at 7 p.m.
Well, Derrick had to help that one down the lanes, and it got him the strike. So he is doing what he can do to stay on pace here with Pat, who has 7 strikes and 1 spare as the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard, manned by Sue Jeziorski, fills us in. 9th frame for Pat Brick. As always, wife Angela, daughter Maddie cheering him on here in his Beat the Champ appearance. Pat, there isn't a Hall of Fame around here that he isn't in. New York State, right. Buffalo, Tonawanda. If there was a Kenmore Bowling Hall of Fame, he'd be in that as well too, right, Brian?
Sure.
Yeah.
He's not in Lockport, though. He's not in Lockport Hall of Fame. Granted, he doesn't bowl in Lockport that often. Well, I was going to say, then
maybe you need to invite him up to Alley Brandt a little more often, so he can complete the Hall of Fame, you know. Well, that's not a Hall of Fame shot there. That's going to wind up being a miss and an open in the 9th, and you're going to have to tell me, Sue, whether that really moves this match any tighter.
I didn't want to say it before he threw that shot, because the only thing that would hold him back from locking that match up was, you know, leaving that little bit of an opening. So what he needs here is
spare and 7.
Spare and 7, yeah. The best that Derrick can do is 232 if he strikes out. So.
Well, he'll have the chance at that spare here in the 10th frame.
Nothing like having that pin come right back in your face. This is what plays on you mentally in this game. You know, you go up on, you know you can lock this match up. You don't make the spare, and you turn around and you leave it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in your mind that you just missed it. So.
All right, so it's a 7 pin to get the spare, and then 7 pins after that. So
good job.
This time Pat comes back and gets the spare. So you're right. That's just it's just some cruelty to that, isn't there?
It just plays on you.
Yeah, but your good bowlers are going to make it, you know, 90+% of the time. So.
You know how those quarter pins are, though. They run in streaks. When you start missing them, it's like the most everyday spare is those corner pins, and then all of a sudden it's like you forgot how to make them. But 7 here to win.
7 to win for Pat Brick.
And we got 9 again.
9, and that will get him a victory. So it's 2 in a row for Pat Brick, as he'll come up with a narrow win over here over Derrick Greene and advance on to next week's show. We'll talk to both guys and get you ready for next week's show. When we return, we're off to a great start here at Classic Lanes in Kenmore. More Beat the Champ right after this. .235 to 219, a win for Pat Brick over Derrick Greene. This is 2 months in a row we've had you on the show, Derrick. So what did you learn from first appearance to today's second appearance?
Well, after talking over with my coach and Ryan Simonelli about my game plan of what I was going to do for the qualified, I was going to try to stay slow with my speed and let the ball do the work. And I'm thankful to bowl against Pat in match play, Hall of Famer, a good friend of mine, is in my book too. But I'll have another day.
All right. Well, maybe next month, right? You're on a streak here, right? So maybe we'll get you back next month. Brian?
All right. Great bowling, Derrick. All tournament long, and thanks for bowling Beat the Champ.
Thank you, Mr. Bray.
My pleasure.
All right, Sue is with our winner, Pat Brick.
Pat, one thing that stood out is that you chose to use 2 different balls on each lane, a different ball on each lane. Was that the secret today?
It helped a lot. I bowl here on Monday nights with my wife in that doubles classic league, and traditionally this pair Lane 32 was a little tighter. Today it was a lot tighter, and I just had to make the right ball change, and that was the right ball. Plus, I got lucky in the 8th frame. I struck on that split. So I mean, Derrick bowled a great game. I mean, he could have been, if I split there, that's a totally different match. So.
Right. Well, that's one of the tools we have is to use different balls on the lanes.
That's true. There's no doubt about it. Luckily, I know my equipment pretty well, so it worked out good so far.
Oh, good choice. Great bowling today.
Right. Home lane advantage, Derrick, right? See, that's as soon as Pat said that, Derrick was like, home lane advantage. So he knew it. So, all right, we had a great start to our month here at Classic Lanes. It's going to get even better next week because we know we're going to have Pat Brick back. Sue and I will preview next week's show when we return for our final segment of Beat the Champ. Well, coming in, Sue, we knew we had great bowlers, and that's why Pat Brick, being one of them, is going to be the guy who advances on. We knew we had a lot of lefties. We knew we had some challenges with the lane. So what did we learn in week 1 here at Classic?
Well, we learned that whoever was going to figure out these lanes were going to be the ones, because they were different, was going to be the one to come to the top. And Pat, of course, spoke that he had a little bit of an advantage knowing this pair, and that one lane did have that hang spot, and of using 2 different balls. I mean, you don't come to a tournament expecting to throw 2 different balls on the lanes. So he figured that out and worked out great.
Well, Sue, follow up on that. How big a gamble or how big a decision was that for Pat to do something that, as Sue said, doesn't often happen?
And it does happen sometimes if people pay a little bit of attention. Derrick also used 2 different balls on the lanes. A lot of times, even in a house shot, if you can't get the right reaction on one lane, it's okay to go to a different ball, and a lot of people don't utilize that knowledge. So ball goes a little bit longer, use a duller ball. If the other lane's hooking, use a little bit shinier ball. It's okay.
There you go. See, we're educating the bowlers of Western New York. So we know we got Pat Brick back for next week's show. Right off the bat, he's going to take on Angela Glazer, the 4th female to be on our show. So that is more than enough reason for you to join us when we see you next week on Beat the Champ.